Welcome to my channel, Let's Summarize It. My name is Hussam Al-Daman. Today we're going to be talking to an expert about higher education in the Middle East. We're going to be talking to Professor Wael Alrashed, who is a prominent educationalist in Kuwait. Professor Alrashed earned his PhD from the University of Hull in 1988. He then joined the accounting department at the College of Business Administration at Kuwait University. Professor Alrashed specializes in taxation and information systems. He has published over 76 articles in international journals and wrote books on taxation and Islamic accounting. He's also on the editorial board of 3 different reputable journals. He has extensive experience in consulting in the Middle East. Professor Alrashed, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I would like to ask you some questions. What is your impression of the teaching and learning methods used in Middle Eastern higher educational institutions?
Salam, Dr. Hussam. First of all, it should be noted that higher educational institutions in the Middle East are often affiliated with governmental institutions or agencies, and therefore they are subject to state policies or the patterns followed in those countries. We may summarize the methods used as follows. Number 1, we find that the methods of education used in these institutions are almost the same across Middle Eastern countries and are almost duplicated in many institutions, and they have not changed over time, meaning there is little modification, change, or addition to them. Perhaps the simplest example of this is the shift in education patterns at the secondary level. Secondly, these methods are mainly based on dictation, from teacher to learner, with emphasis on memorization. They do not give the learner the opportunity to show any innovation or attempt to change that information, whether in terms of its content or in terms of its transmission. Thirdly, the curricula does not change for long periods of time, meaning that we find that many of these curricula are fixed and have not been changed or modified, except for some textbooks that come from international institutions or publishing houses. Fourthly, we usually find there is a very important role for academic advisors in higher education institutions. Unfortunately, this role has declined in the region during the last 2 decades, as there is little guidance for the learner. Fifthly, these methods are often based on the teacher's performance in the first place without focusing on raising the abilities and skills of the learner. Sixthly, the resources available to institutions of higher education to introduce new emerging methods that keep pace with the times are often a problem, which means that these institutions are not given the opportunity to adapt new methods. Seventh, these institutions do not benefit from feedback in order to achieve the required advantage. Eighthly, the elements of motivation is lacking in the early stages of education. Ninthly, the means of education are often horizontal due to the limited teaching spaces and the high numbers of learners, especially in countries that have large population. Tenthly, these higher education institutions usually seek to harmonize between infrastructure and education systems, and this harmonization is often modest. As for the 11th point, that we do not find correlation between sequential interconnection between educational curricula and educational methods.
Many thanks, Professor Alrashed, for this detailed answer. My second question: what is the single most apparent difference between Western and Middle Eastern higher educational systems?
First, universities in the West are often from the private sector, and their connection to the public sector is somewhat limited, and they do not deviate from regulations, which gives them a kind of independence, and this is a very important element. There is also a variety of learners in most Western countries. They come from different backgrounds, and this gives them a kind of diversity and intellectual addition. There is also a clear source of funding in higher education institutions in Western systems relative to those in the Middle East. Unlike the West, Middle Eastern higher educational institutions depend mainly on subsidies that come from the government, and therefore they are subject to many public policies. For example, this includes admission policies and the number of applicants that can be admitted to those universities. Additionally, the demand for higher education in the West is considered a means to ensure job security and to obtain appropriate job according to the required specialization. Maybe not the same in the Middle East, more than anything else. There are also very advanced and developed infrastructure in educational institutions in Western countries as opposed to the Middle Eastern countries. There is constant change and modernity in the operations and systems used in Western countries, maybe not the same in Middle Eastern countries. We can also say there is also a link between research and community mission and performance in Western educational institutions. Finally, there is an active role for the student or the learner in Western education institution, perhaps more so than in Middle Eastern higher educational institutions.
Great, thank you so much, Professor Alrashed. My third question: does digitization hold the key to changing teaching and learning in the Middle East?
There is no doubt that this era of digital technology has a significant impact on directing higher education in the world in general, especially with regard to strategies for science and technology. Definitely, this plays a major part in expanding the role of scientific research and innovation, thus transforming a society into a knowledge society and supporting all activities and sectors such as the economy. There is also an important element, which is the issue of smart technology and its entry into all types and forms of life, such as communication and related processes in government services. It also plays an active role in supporting the development of those countries. This also has a very important dimension, as well as the technical future and its role in the process of introducing systems into other societal issues, such as the issue of climate change. For example, achieving a kind of growth in the rates of the economy and development in the country. We find there are a vast number of higher education institutions, but in light of digitization, there is usually a kind of sifting of these institutions to see which ones provide quality education. There is also a need for harmony between educational processes and the requirement for labor market, as well as focusing on the skills and knowledge of diversity in the academic program. There is also a change in the means of methodology of education in order to achieve good entry into the new digital world.
Thank you so much, Professor Alrashed. On to my final question. Where do you predict higher education will be in 2025?
There is no doubt that there will be a leap, a shift in technology, a digital shift, which will impact the learning process. There will also be a significant impact on teaching and learning methods, such as those that depend on technology. There will also be emphasis placed on funding and cost with regards to higher educational institutions. There are great possibilities that there will be simulation-based learning so that the best systems are applied to communicate experiences to the learner. Additionally, there are cases related to teaching methodologies to help the learner. There is also a very important point, which is the issue of positive interaction between the learner and the course material, which is usually available in digital form, which means it gives opportunity to learner to access material. There will also be greater focus on the cognitive and intellectual skills that are required in the labor market. There is no doubt that there will be a major change at the level of legal legislation that regulates the educational process to ensure freedom of learning. Also, there will be diverse means of delivery such as synchronous and asynchronous learning patterns. It is expected that learners could learn through virtual classrooms and other means as well. There will be new infrastructure that provides innovative learning processes. In short, technology will have an impact on higher educational institutions, a positive impact that will result in paradigm shift in education and society in general.
I want to thank you for your participation and for this fantastic information that you've provided us. I am sure that all the viewers will benefit from this as much as I have. Thank you so much. Now I would like to turn my attention to you. You have heard what Professor Alrashed has mentioned. I would love to hear your opinion on the same questions that were raised in today's topic.